Hi, welcome to the Goodpush Toolkit on creative education. So through this video slideshow, we're going to cover a few different topics. So firstly, we'll talk about how the Skate and Create program at Skateistan started. Then we'll look at what Create, so the specific educational part of that program, looks like now. Then I'll talk about a few example lessons to give you a better idea on what these kinds of activities look like. We'll also talk about multimedia exchanges, debriefing after classes, and getting community buy-in for these kinds of activities. Then there's some next steps and also an activity that you can do if you have the time. So, what will you get out of this presentation? Well, firstly, a clear understanding of what a structured Create program looks like. Then I think through the examples, you'll get some inspiration for your own creative educational programming if you want to do that in the future. And then also some specific ideas on potential lesson plans and next steps that you can take. So before we start, just think for a minute about what your own experience is with teaching topics other than skating. So this doesn't necessarily have to be at your skate project, but in life, have you done any other teaching, whether it was tutoring or coaching or anything informal? Because if you have, these things can all be very useful to bring into your creative educational programming. So Skateistan's Skate and Create program started in December 2009 at our very first skate school in Kabul, Afghanistan. And the idea came about pretty organically. So the original concept for the skate school was to build a facility with skate parks and classrooms so that when kids came, they would actually end up spending the same amount of time in the classroom as in the skate park. This was what our founder and executive director, Ollie, had as a vision for Skateistan. And at the time, though, this was pretty rough in terms of what the kids would be learning in the classroom. It was kind of an experimental phase to see what worked. And when I arrived in May 2010 as a volunteer, we were pretty much putting together the lesson plans for each week, like, the day before, and not really having kind of a long-term idea of what should be happening. And what we were seeing over time was that some of the lesson plans we came up with just were not making sense. So for example, I remember one that we did was having the kids make English alphabet flashcards to help with like learning English and this kind of a thing. But the issue is that we had such a range of educational backgrounds in these classrooms where some kids had never even held a pen before and couldn't spell their own name in Dari, the local language, where other kids were already fluent in speaking and writing English. So we figured out that these kinds of activities didn't really make sense, and that actually it would be better to move away from anything requiring literacy and to be using more and more arts, because arts is more of a level playing field, more like the skate park. It's something that anyone can do, and everyone brings different talents and strengths to the activities. So yeah, that was basically the idea. And over time we learned, and it developed from these, one-off weekly lessons to having topics that would last over 3 months. So we started to have semesters, and this is something that has continued today. So a bit more about what the Create part of Skate and Create looks like now. So we have a kind of an idea of it being based on some key values. So these are things like being culture-based. So Skateistan now works across 3 different countries: Afghanistan, Cambodia, and South Africa. So even if they're using the same curriculum, the same lesson plans, they're adapting it to the local context and culture. Another value that we have is experiential learning, so learning through doing. This is something, as I said, that was super important to the core of the program for it to work. And we also try to make lessons that are encouraging a growth mindset, so where kids are learning and failing and realizing that that's okay and continuing on. So you can see on the slide here that there is an example of our annual semester themes from 2018. So a lot of the lesson plans, they're not just doing art for art's sake. It's always based on some kind of an educational goal or something that the kids are learning through the process. So in the example there, you'll see that we had people of the world, so looking at like culture. We had the natural balance curriculum, which is looking at environmental things. We did gardening, things like that. Then creation and innovation. So this is exploring kind of like science project-y type of stuff to learn more about the world, maybe about the solar system, things like that. And then act local from our last semester was really looking at having the kids look at their own communities and what kind of action they could take to make it better. And something else that we realized over time in Skaistan is that it's very useful to be revisiting themes from different perspectives so that the ideas really take root with the kids. So I mentioned that we do a lot of environmental stuff. So every year we have some activities that relate to the environment in some way. So it can be about the importance of recycling. It can be about pollution. We could do cleanups around the skate park. We do a lot of gardening activities and learning about different life cycles and this kind of thing. And we keep visiting it because we also have students attending for more than a year. So they can kind of grow their knowledge of these topics over time. So to make this idea of creative education a bit more real, I want to talk about some lesson plan examples, and I'll talk about some which I was directly involved in when I was teaching classes in Afghanistan. So we had one semester where we did a theater curriculum with all the kids, and we framed them around what were called the Millennium Development Goals, which was like the thing that happened before the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's all about, what kind of changes need to be happening in the world to make it better. So these are related to, gender equality and access to education and stuff like that. So we gave the kids an overview on this topic, and then we had them talk about what challenges they saw around them and to then write a theater play based on that. And they did all different parts of the play. So from doing the storyboarding and creating the props and the costumes, then of course rehearsals, and we then ended up filming each of the plays too. And some of the kids even performed them live at an event that we had later in the year. And this was like a really cool way to make a very kind of big topic something that is real and relatable for the kids. It was super fun. Another lesson that we did that went over several weeks was called Ideal Kabul, and I believe it ran over about 4 weeks. So the kids were coming once a week for this, and it combined a few different things. So firstly, we did a kind of photography training with the kids, just point and shoots, and went out into the neighborhood around the skate park and had the kids, each of them shooting photos. And then the kids each one selected their favorite photo, which we, for the next lesson, got laminated so that they could do a drawing over top of like, in an ideal world, what would Kabul look like? What kinds of things would they like to see? And it was amazing to see like the creativity there. You can already see on the right side of the slide there some of the examples. There was a lot of, grass and trees and, football fields and stuff like that. And there was also a lot of kids that drew mini ramps and skateboarders, and I like this one in the middle there seems to have like a spaceship, so that's pretty cool. And also in this example, you can see there more like the skaters going down the road. Most of the roads aren't very well paved at the moment. And then on the right, there's a photo of actually one of our security guards outside of the facility, and this kid has made him into some kind of a fantastic clown animal, which I love. So that was a super fun semester, and they actually did the same kind of project in Cambodia as well. That went really well. And some other ideas. So obviously the kids that are coming to your project are coming because they love skateboarding. So a nice way to kind of introduce this creative education thing is to directly have like a skate theme with it, because the kids are going to get like so stoked about doing anything involving skateboarding. So, I mean, maybe you're already doing some things like having kids help put the boards together. Other, really simple ideas are to have them do paintings or make sculptures. And you can also, incorporate themes into these kinds of activities if you want. So you see in the top right, we had girls doing henna paintings on the skateboard. So that was a theme we had on Afghan culture. And you can also do other things, like in the top middle example in Cambodia, they did a lesson plan on learning how to read maps and actually had kids like making maps and navigating around on a skateboard, which they were really into. So those are just a few ideas. Something else that we've done a lot of in the Create classes over time at Skateistan have been multimedia and cultural exchanges. So, cultural exchanges have existed for a long time, and they've usually involved people going back and forth, which can be, in person, which can be very expensive and not really manageable. But now we obviously have technology where we can connect with each other very easily. And these exchanges are just super interesting for kids because by connecting and sharing information with each other, they're able to build understanding and friendship, across the world. They can also learn about different parts of the world, can do a language exchange, especially a lot of kids are very interested in improving their English. It can also help to allow youth to create a positive image of their community and be more connected with the global skate community. So I know definitely in Afghanistan there was an interest in showing people something aside from just like the war and terrorists and like all these kind of ideas that people have about the country. And there's lots of different formats you can use for these exchanges. I have some listed there. The obvious ones are doing video calls or exchanging video stories and stuff. And you can, have people talking about different things. You can even just send skate videos back and forth. You can also do art exchanges. So there's lots of different things. And we've done ones that were, both. So you see on the side there on the bottom right, that's an example where we were sending skate videos back and forth with another project called Skate Like a Girl, which is based in the US. So we had this Afghan-US exchange, and we've actually had exchanges with kids all over the world. So it's been really interesting. And if you do want to do this, I would just give a kind of disclaimer that it can be very time-consuming unless you plan it in the right way. So it's very useful before you start to really be a bit careful about which exchange partners you choose. So these can be schools or other NGOs or skate parks or whatever, other community groups. And it's very useful to really connect with this exchange partner and figure out if there's someone on the other end who's like reliable and who has the time to kind of make it happen. And it's also very useful to kind of set a goal right from the start of what you want to do, like how long you want to do it for. Do you want to have like a month-long exchange where you each send back and forth some videos or some drawings or whatever? Just think about that. And then there's obviously logistical questions like time difference, if you actually want to organize like a Skype or like a WhatsApp or something video exchange. And what are the languages? Do you need to do translation? How are you going to make that work? So just a few things to think about, but they can be actually quite easy if you plan it well, and super interesting for the kids. Something that is useful to think about when you're doing any kind of activity, so not just these creative educational classes, is to plan in a debrief at the end of each activity where you ask the participants about how it went, what they learned, what they liked best, what they didn't like. And this is a really good way to basically include the voices of the people that you're creating these programs for. And it's also one way to check how well your programs are working. If you want to know other ways, definitely check out the monitoring, evaluation, and learning section of this toolkit. It has all kinds of ideas on how to assess the quality of what you're doing and how it's working, what the impact is. But the debrief is one way, and it's super simple. It's, asking questions. You can even ask them to raise your hands if you had fun, raise your hands if you learned something, these kinds of things. And yeah, definitely worth doing. Something that we've noticed in the countries that Skateistan works in is that not all parents or community members understand the value of creative education type classes right away. I guess you probably may have also had these issues when you first start doing skate program. You have to get people on board. But in terms of the creative education stuff, a lot of times they're, unsure about what the purpose is because they don't really understand what their kids are learning. So a big part of overcoming this is to try to find ways to show the parents what the kids are learning as much as you can. So this starts with when you're registering kids, or when maybe if parents are visiting the program, to kind of show what the classes are and explain what the benefits are. So whether it's building confidence, life skills, problem solving, if it's things that are going to be, complementing the education they're getting in school, you can talk about these sorts of things. Then you can also include arts activities where the kids actually have a project that they can take home with them and show their parents. And this can be something really nice, like whether they've grown a plant or they've taken photos, they've done drawings, they've made puppets. And another really effective one is if you hold regular community events where you invite parents and you actually have the artwork and the different things that kids have done on display. Maybe you have them doing plays or otherwise kind of demonstrating what it is that they've learned. It's also quite useful and important to try to include the community input whenever you can. So if there's suggestions from parents or others in the community, obviously from the kids themselves, about topics that they want to explore, or challenges, or there's certain arts activities they're interested to learn about. So for example, we've had a lot of the kids express an interest in learning photography and video, and that kind of stuff. So we've done quite a bit of that. And yeah, just share success stories whenever you can, especially if you can get kind of testimonials from other parents about the change they've seen in the kids and what they've gotten out of it. And lastly, it can also be useful to frame these programs that you're doing in terms of a dollar value. So most of us are working as nonprofit organizations where the kids or the participants are coming for free. And this can mean that then the activities that you provide are not always valued. So it can be useful to say, estimate the dollar value of the program, what you're fundraising for, and cost of you or whoever teaching, and then frame it as a sort of prestigious scholarship that you're providing to the kids. And this may be more valued than just a free activity. So we're nearing the end here of the creative education presentation. So firstly, what you can do as a next step, I would say, is ask your participants what they'd be interested to learn about. So that can be definitely a good starting point if you've never done anything like this. Another way to kind of get your bearings on what you could potentially do in terms of creative education is to make a couple lists. So firstly, what are the challenges facing the community that you work in, and what are the resources that you have access to? So this can give you ideas on the kinds of topics to do, maybe where you can even do these kinds of activities. Maybe some of them can be done at a skate park. Maybe there's a partner organization that has some kind of a space that you can use. Maybe there's parents who can help teach, so think about that. And thirdly, I'd say just go ahead and make your own lesson plan. Just try it out. So on the next slide, I'll go through some kind of instructions, and if you have time, or you can always come back to this, you can do it either alone or with a team. So this is just a really brief suggested activity for getting started on a lesson plan. The Goodpush Toolkit on creative education has a list of resources at the bottom, and one of them is a template for a lesson plan. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to download that lesson plan, and we're going to use it in this activity. The first thing you're going to want to do once you have your lesson plan downloaded is, either on your own or if you have a project team, brainstorm potential creative education activities that you could do with the participants you're usually working with. And it could be ones that are maybe inspired by some of the ones in this presentation. Maybe you are already doing certain types of activities, like, for example, maybe you regularly do cleanups around the skate park. So thinking about, hey, is there ways that we can maybe build in a bit of a learning goals or some bigger topics into these activities? So put down your ideas, and then either individually or as a group, choose one of those activities that you'd like to do at your project site. And we're going to basically detail that idea out in the lesson plan template. So in the slide here, you can see the first page of the template, and it's pretty simple. At first, maybe it's a bit overwhelming, but yeah, it has spaces for you to put up the very top, the theme, the location, the length of time, these basics. And then on the right side with the green stuff, you can see that the very top has like a learning objective or an outcome. So what is it that you want the kids to get out of it? Is it to learn more about looking after the environment? Is it to learn about their own health or nutrition or something like this? Maybe it's just to learn about other skate, cultures around the world or whatever. Then you can put in a few points for lesson preparation, and you don't have to do this in order either. Maybe you end up coming back to some of these things after you've kind of put in the later details. And you see a section for assessment. Maybe you don't have to worry about that at the moment. That could be something you fill out once you've gone through our monitoring, evaluation, and learning toolkit. But this is basically like how you're going to figure out how it went. But you could also just put in the debrief there and some ideas of questions. So, for example, asking the kids what they learned. Then on the left, it's always useful to put in what the key vocabulary is, because sometimes there's kind of technical words involved and you want to explain those so everyone knows what you're talking about. And then importantly, there's a place to list the materials and equipment that you're actually going to need for the lesson plan. So that can be like pen and paper, but it can also be maybe you want to link to a certain YouTube video that you want to show or something. And if you have the template there, you'll see the second page has where you're actually going to like list out the activities that you're going to do. So that's just to give you an overview. So once you have your idea picked, start to put your ideas down on the lesson plan template. And then I would say the next steps are to, as a team, once you feel it's in a decent shape, to get the supplies together that you need for the lesson plan and just try it out. And just a note before you're actually doing the lesson is to just think about what you need to make sure that it goes smoothly and safely. So, do you make sure, double check, you have all the materials that you need? So whatever is listed and you haven't forgotten everything. Think a little bit about the order of the activities. So especially with younger kids, you don't want them sitting for more than 10 or 15 minutes without doing something active. So making sure that there's some mixing it up, and also that you're not handing out the pens and paper before you've actually explained what's going to happen, because no one's going to pay attention to you. They're just going to be like doodling. And, bigger things to think about is like if you're going to confront maybe a more sensitive topic. So say there's big issues with, drug abuse and stuff like that, and you want to maybe do a lesson related to that, to be prepared for challenging questions and having kind of answers in mind. So yeah, that's basically it. Don't be daunted. I think the best thing is to just start. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, at Skaistan, we had no idea what was going to work, and we just tried and failed, and eventually you get somewhere. Thank you for watching this presentation on creative education from Goodpush. And yeah, let us know if you do make any lesson plans and they go well. We'd be really excited to hear about it and see some photos and share it on our social media. So yeah, keep us posted.